Special sauce.
I think it was like for Charles Schwab.
Oh, really?
What's special about it? Not too much traffic driving. Yeah. A really good class. There's no like serious computer issues in the class, which is really good. I think Julie will spy on her sometime. Yeah, that was sweet. I just lost Hannah Rumpy back to the real world now.
That was just right. Yeah, I'm actually like crazy.
They had somebody to cover her, right?
Yeah, but these people like these people's lives. That's one person.
Actually had our last gaming hardware. We went from games, programs,
There you go. It went so well.
got some traction with it.
Really did. I learned actually like 3 times before we sat together and this one.
They're still kind of doing some good things also.
That was it.
leg is off.
Oh no.
Got it.
Oh, never mind, you got it.
This is even better than the last wobbly one that we had.
Austin is really becoming a well-respected tech hub, and Capital Factory is at the center of that.
We came in with this idea of like, we're going to start a company together because we start companies together.
There's so much going on here, and there's just the right mix of people here.
There's the right investors, the right employees, like there's the right peers.
The Capital Factory has events that run pretty much every day.
You know, our guys after the meeting are like, hey, by the way, if anybody's looking to hire, you know, let them come talk to us. No, actually, come over to our office. It's another 40 feet here.
The entire growth of your startup to probably your first 20 employees is contained within the Capital Factory.
So whatever you're recruiting for, whatever tech stack or platform or hardware or software or even 3D printing now, there's almost always those people coming to your office on a day-to-day basis. And you just sit around at nighttime, they'll probably give you free pizza and beer.
And you want to demo your product after the event. Well, you're here at Capital Factory.
One of the coolest meetups that I've been to at Capital Factory is the Women at Austin meetup, because I was able to network with other women entrepreneurs.
Working with other people who are in the same spot as you were there 6 months ago or going to be there 6 months from now is really cool.
The entire atmosphere is wonderful. The meeting rooms that you can reserve.
Here's a really good office environment that we take care of everything. Oh, by the way, there's free snacks. Oh, by the way, there's this managed conferencing situation.
One of the best resources here at Capital Factory is the office hours.
The Capital Factory Mentor Network is now so big, and the number of people in almost every industry vertical that are there now, and most of those guys are entrepreneurs themselves.
When you meet mentors, you meet other entrepreneurs. Like for us in particular, I met my co-founder here.
I met my co-founder up here.
There's just a real critical mass down here.
Our developers went to one of the development meetups and we met our newest developer, Kyle, there, and we hired him.
The Capital Factory was with us for 2 years, going from that sort of ambition to the actual reality of having a successful company with like, a significant amount of money raised and like a high functioning team.
You know, technology is just as much about community as anything else.
You become part of this national family of people.
All right, hey everybody, I'm Josh Baer. Welcome to the Intro to the Austin Startup Scene Wobbly version. Glad you could all be here. This is a series we do every Tuesday. We rotate through intro to fundraising, intro to the startup scene. We do an intro to mentoring and investing. These are all designed to help people plug into the startup scene. So hopefully you're in the right spot. I'm going to go through about maybe 45 minutes of slides to cover some basic stuff. And then I've got Fred Schmidt, who's another entrepreneur and mentor and an investor here in Austin and director here at Capital Factory, who'll come up and help do answer questions on that too. So we'll blow through it. There's a lot of info, so be prepared for it to go fast. The slides are all online. You don't have to write all this down. Feel free to take pictures of slides if you want or tweet about it. I'm at Joshua Baer. This series is ATX Startup Scene. The link, if someone wants to come to one of these, is atxstartupscene.com. Obviously, this is Capital Factory. And then these all get recorded as well. So there's a camera on the ceiling right there. So it's all being streamed online. So it's live, and they all get recorded. So not only is this talk there, but the live talk we did last month, the month before that, and the month before that. The talk's mostly the same, but the people up here are different, and they all say different things. So there's a lot of interesting stuff up there as well too. So the types of things we're going to cover, what's different about Austin, a little history lesson on how Austin became a tech hub, what's special or different about Austin versus other places, and really how do you plug in and know what's going on. Some other stuff I'll probably flip through really quickly, but we can dig more into depending on what you're almost interested in is, how do I get a job at a startup, how do I find a co-founder, how do you meet investors, there's a whole other talk just about that, where do you go to work, and then obviously we'll do the Ask Me Anything or Q&A. So my question is for you. Who here went on the tour today? Most of you. Good, great. Who's born in Austin? Wow, that's like way more than normal. Nobody's really born in Austin. Who recently moved here? That's less than usual. Wow. Okay, so you weren't born here. You didn't recently move here. So we've got a bunch of long-time Austin people. Anybody live in Silicon Valley before? A couple of you. Who's got a startup? Should be more proud of it than that. Who wants to work at a startup? Okay. You now know each other. Who's tech? Who's business? Who's been to South by? Who went to UT? Same people. Okay, who hasn't raised their hand for anything? Anybody? All right, cool. That'll help me tune this a little bit. I told you most of this online. The slides are slideshare.net/Joshua Bear. The videos are youtube.com/AustinTechLive. This last link I'll talk about a little bit more. Hopefully you saw this before you came here, but that last bit.ly link, plug into ATX Startup Scene, is a blog post of mine with like 10, it's like all actionable, do this, follow these people on Twitter, go to this coffee shop, attend this event, do this thing. And so that's another helpful way to plug in and things to go do. So you should check out as well. All right, so what's different about Austin? Austin is the fastest growing city in the country, has been for a couple of years. Seems like it's still going that way. I don't know who counts everybody, but apparently 165 people move here every day, as many of you did. And they move here from all over the place. And they move here for lots of different reasons, but mostly just because everywhere they look, everyone says they should move here, because anytime they make a top 10 list of all the best places to live, Austin's pretty much always at the top of the list. It's just as in the past few months, it was the #1 place in America to start a small business. It's the #1 place for a software developer to get a job and get the most bang for their buck. It's the #1 place for a software company to hire a software engineer and get the most bang for their buck. Kauffman Foundation just ranked Austin the #1 startup metro in the country for the second year in a row. And there just continue to be more and more of those things, whether it's the best place for young people or for startups, for small businesses, or for whatever it might be. Austin's right at the top of that list. And actually, Texas in general is totally kicking ass. Texas dominates whatever top 10 list that'll be. It'll basically be Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, and Houston are on that top 10 list. And Texas is really kicking ass. If Texas were a country by itself, which many times we think we are, it would be the 12th largest economy in the world. I mean, Texas, like if you can own the Texas market, that's like a big fucking deal. And lots of people are getting that, and nobody owns Texas. It's really kind of wide open. Well, we kind of own Texas, but like I said, #1 startup metro in the country, and continuing to boom. So. But for the same reasons that everybody wants to move here, that's why startups want to move here, why big companies want to move here, and mostly that's because they want to hire all you. They want to hire all those people. So what's different about Austin? It's funny, I'm going to tell you what's different about Austin because this is from Austin's perspective, but actually what I find, and I've traveled to a lot of different startup communities around the country and around the world, is that most places that aren't Silicon Valley are kind of all the same and all think of themselves as being really different, but they're actually they all have a lot in common. And most of these things are pretty common to most places that aren't Silicon Valley. And so one, it's a very bootstrap first kind of culture. And so your bootstrapping is starting something when you shouldn't be able to. It's starting something without enough resources or money or other things, without funding, and figuring out a way to make it happen. And that's really what most first-time entrepreneurs need to do to get started. Here in Austin, or really just about anywhere. And partly because it's become so much easier to do that. It used to cost a lot more money to start a company than it does now, particularly a tech company. And so if you're doing that, much more is expected of you. And Austin certainly is that kind of place. I bootstrapped my first business, started in my dorm room in college, and if you look around the directors and the investors here at Capital Factory, you'll find a lot of them bootstrapped their first businesses as well. So even the very, very successful entrepreneurs you're going to go look up to who maybe raised $50 or $100 million or more, I bet if you go look back, a lot of them in Austin bootstrapped their first businesses. Hand in hand with that is being very revenue focused. Austin is not an easy place to start a business that does not know how it's going to make money. I don't know where anywhere is an easy place to start a business that doesn't know how it's going to make money. Apparently, some people think California is an easy place to go do that. But this is a really hard place to do that. You need to be able to articulate how your business is going to make money. You're going to have a tough time getting co-founders or employees to work for you. You're going to have a tough time getting investors. You're going to have a tough time getting press or other people excited about it if you don't have a really clear way you're going to make money. And typically, that tends to be, customer focused. How are you going to get customers early on? People move to Austin for quality of life. This is my impression, at least from talking to lots of people. They obviously have a lot of trade-offs. There's all kinds of people that move here for sure, but a lot of people I talk to, they're often kind of not right out of school. Maybe they're just starting to have a family. Maybe they just started. Maybe they just exited one business or making a transition, and they realize that they want to work really hard and they want to do really important things, but they also want to have a great lifestyle. And maybe they don't want to just work all the time, and they want to be able to enjoy the music scene here, or the outdoors, or all the other things that happen here. And I think that's why a lot of people move here. And one of the trade-offs of that is that I think it's much easier to retain talent here. Like when somebody joins your company, it's much harder for them to get poached and go somewhere else, because people who join for quality of life are much less likely to hop around so quickly. The flip side of that is it's harder to get people in Austin to bust their ass. I'm not saying nobody does it, like I do, and I know lots of people that do, but I hear lots of CEOs complain that ones that just moved here from Silicon Valley. They're like, hey, everybody went home at 6 o'clock. What happened? Those are some of the trade-offs, and so you're gonna have to balance that. How do you motivate people to work startup life, which is all the time? And in Austin, social capital is really important, especially if you're new to Austin. This is a great way to plug in and to meet people and to become part of it. And that is, it's paying it forward. It's that that you can go volunteer for stuff or help out or get involved and be part of all the great things that are happening in Austin. And that's a great way to meet people and kind of give people a taste of what you can add and to find great opportunities and things like that too. And that's part of why we do this. We don't make any money off doing this. Certainly it helps us to meet entrepreneurs and to meet people, but this is one of many things that we try to do to help give back to the community and help people get plugged in. And overall, one of the things that we benefit the most from is there's just really this rising tide mentality here in Austin right now, this feeling that things are growing and booming and people are moving here, and if it's good for me, if it's good for you, and my company's going to do better and be more successful and be easier to raise money if other companies are being successful and raising money and doing good things like that. And in a lot of places, it's just not like that. And that's something really special that we have here that I hope we can keep for as long as possible. All right, here's a quick history lesson. This is my history lesson. I just kind of made all this up. This is from me talking to lots of people and people that I know, but there's no official history book or anything like that. I think it's pretty right. I've talked to a lot of people about it. I think this is a pretty good take on it, but take it for what you paid for it. If you go back and you talk to as many people as you can about what started the tech community in Austin, the startup community here in Austin, I feel like everybody I talk to goes back to this guy, George Kosmetsky. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us anymore, but George was the founder of a company called Teledyne, which was a national semiconductor company. A computer company. He got involved in, after that, got very involved here locally in Austin in the Chamber of Commerce, at the university. He helped create the Austin Technology Incubator and the IC Squared Institute, and just did a ton of great things for Austin. And you'll see his name around on different things, and lots of people that have worked with him and looked up to him a lot. Two people that worked with him that are still around. One's Admiral Bobby Inman. He helped run the CIA for a while before he got together with Kosmetsky and Pike Powers and helped with many other people as well to bring MCC to Austin. And MCC was in the 80s, was the Microelectronics and Computer Consortium. You may have seen that building, although I think it's about to be demolished. It doesn't have MCC on the top of it anymore. It's called the West Pickle Research Center up in the Arboretum. And this was, back in the 80s, we weren't worried about the Chinese, we weren't worried about the Russians, we were worried about the Japanese outsmarting us by developing chips and computers better than us. And so what happened was a bunch of companies got together and put together a bunch of money in this big national consortium to fund a think tank to go help us be more competitive around chip design and semiconductors. And so that was MCC. And just like when they put out, trying to figure out where the Olympics are going to go, they have a big RFP process, and all these cities compete to be where the Olympics goes. All these cities, Austin obviously included, were competing to be the place where MCC landed. And because of those gentlemen that I just mentioned and many others, we got MCC to come here. And that brought money and talent and really put Austin on the map as a tech place that was a really important milestone. Here's one of the next ones.
This is the story of the little room over the pizza place at 315 Chestnut Street, the modest first floor bedroom in Tallinn, Estonia, and the dusty basement at 1406 35th Street. It is the story of the old dining room table at 25th and Hoffman Avenue, the southbound bus barreling down I-95, and the second floor above the strip mall at Roble and El Camino.
This magic moment,
It is the story of where every great idea begins,
so different and so new.
where those with endless vision and an equal amount of audaciousness believed they had the power to do more, time and time again. At Dell, we're honored to be part of some of the world's great stories. Stories that began much the same way ours did, in a little dorm room, number 2713.
This magic moment.
So Dell was one of the next big things that happened here in Austin. If we didn't have that white building right there, you could probably see the towers where Michael Dell started Dell in his dorm room. And that was obviously another huge thing for Austin. It really put Austin on the map for having a big company that was started here. Whole Foods, another great big company that was started here. But more importantly, what it did is it started this flywheel going of success, and it was this big successful company that grew very, very quickly over 30 or 40 years. And over that time, what happens as a company grows? It goes from him working out of his dorm room or somewhere else to becoming a $35 billion company, one of the biggest companies in the world. Well, all kinds of things happen during that process. Obviously, they recruit lots of people that come here from all over the place, that come here to Austin. All those people, they work together and they learn all kinds of things. They learn a lot about real problems that big companies have, that they experience as they're growing. They learn about the problems that their customers have because they're working on different kinds of problems with all different people. They form teams. They learn who to work with. They know who else at Dell is really good that they want to go work with and that they get along well and work with. They make money, when a big company like that is successful. Lots of people made lots of money, and that gives them the resources to go start their own company, invest in a company, do something else. So all these things come out of a big company growing like that really create a foundation for more of this to happen. One of those things was that Dell created all the Dellionaires. That's what they used to call them, which were the people that became millionaires working at Dell. And those people went on to go become VCs, become angel investors, start companies, do all these other things. And that's this cycle, which is startup. Some actually have some success. That creates all those great outcomes that I just talked about. That creates more angel investors and founders who then go around and start more companies. And that cycle is what creates the startup community. The problem is that cycle takes like 10 years to get around once if it goes fast. It's a long time, and so we're like 3 or 4 turns around the circle. And Silicon Valley's like 6 or 7 turns around the circle. I'm not saying that's the only difference, but like that's part of it, and there's a lot of other cities that are just trying to get their circle going. They're trying to get that first piece going, and that's the one thing you have going for us. This is a slide. This slide's like, I bet it's 15 years old. And if we were to redo it today, it would take over the whole screen, I'm sure. And this was a slide created by Bob Fabio, who is a mentor here at Capital Factory and the founder of a startup right now called eRelevance Corp. But he was also one of the founders of another big Austin success story called Tivoli, which eventually went public and then was acquired by IBM in the late 90s. And this chart is meant to show all of the companies that came out of Tivoli. These are all the people who worked at Tivoli who went on to go start other companies and form teams and spun out. And many of these could each make their own tree. Motive would have its own whole tree, and Pluck would have its whole own tree. And there's and Vignette would have its whole own tree. And there's other companies that would be on here that that would be further down that have been started since then that we wouldn't know about. So anyway, that's just one example, but you can make this same chart for so many other companies. You could make that chart for Trilogy, which is the company that brought me here to Austin, or you could make it for HomeAway or Bazaar Voice or Indeed or Retail Me Not or lots of other companies in here that recently have had pretty big exits or liquidity events and had that rapid growth and created those kinds of opportunities. And there's a whole bunch more coming down the pipe, which we can talk about. So what's special about Austin? There's lots of things that are special about Austin. I'm going to hit on 5 really quickly that I think are really unique. South by Southwest, the Startup Week, which hopefully many of you participated in just a few weeks ago. Google's presence here in Austin, which is incredibly strong, and then Apple's secret presence here in Austin, which is also incredibly strong. The University of Texas and Capital Factory. I know about half of you said you'd been to South by Southwest. South by Southwest is coming up in March. It's in March every year. It is really the biggest thing that happens here in Austin. Typically brings in, I think, generally about 100,000 people. In numbers, maybe it's somewhat comparable to F1, except like it's here in the middle of downtown and it like takes over and is very visible, whereas F1's kind of like over there and it's like a big party weekend, but it's not the same kind of thing. It really takes over all of Austin while it's here. We tell a lot of people that come to visit that think they know Austin. We're like, well, you didn't really see Austin. You saw Austin during South by. You need to come back some other time to see what Austin's actually like. Not that it's like worse. It's just it's a madhouse. So there's all this stuff going on. It takes over all of downtown. South by started as a music festival early on. They added a film festival. This was about 30 years ago. And then in the 80s, they added the multimedia component of it at the time. And that was what became the Interactive Festival. The Interactive Festival has grown over time to become the biggest component of all of it. But really, although they kind of branded as music, film, interactive, really South by Southwest has about 20 different conferences happening at once on all these different verticals: education, startups, virtual reality, gaming, government, all these different pieces. And what's I think so special about it, which is encompassed by the music, film, interactive component, is it's the melting pot of all these different creatives that they bring in. And so you get a panel that's about growing your business in the music industry, right? And then you get some mix of some famous musician and some artist and then some tech person there all talking about it, and that's really interesting. With South by, there's a lot of different ways to take advantage of South by. The obvious thing is to go buy a badge, is what it's called, like an official conference pass. They're generally pretty expensive. They're $700 or $800, and that gets you full access to attending all the different panels and events and sessions. And there's a lot of parties and other things you get to go to. It's very worthwhile. I think it's a great conference. There's a lot of great content. There's some great people that come here to Austin, and I've enjoyed a lot of the sessions and activities. I also think it's important to understand that you can completely do South by and get just as much out of it without ever buying a badge and just doing all the free stuff. And like I said, the badge is totally worth it. I usually get one, and I think it's worth it. But you shouldn't see it as like, oh, I'm not getting a badge, that means I'm skipping South by. Like, you can totally do South by, and that's because there's so much stuff happening around South by that is unofficial. That's not an official event that you don't need a badge to get into. You just either it's just open to the public and it's free. There's a lot of free beer at South by, or you just you can invite somebody to go. And so really, I think the most important thing about South by is not going to the biggest party, although we throw the biggest party and it's awesome. But it's really getting into the small room with 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 people that were highly curated, that came from all over the country. That's your people that you're trying to go meet. And so really, I think the best way to get the most out of South by is to really do your homework, to really spend time researching. I mean, I probably spent 10 to 20 hours pre-South by just going through the schedule and going through Twitter and researching who's coming. It's something I have to do myself. But to figure out who are the people coming that I need to go meet and that I want to plug into, or the companies that are coming, I look at the speaker list, who's speaking, and anyone that's coming, I start reaching out to them, 2 months ahead of time. Like, hey, you're coming to South by. What kind of things are you going to be doing? Are you putting on any events? Can you come by Capital Factory? I figure out what events do I want to put on, and I got to go make dinner reservations because they're all going to fill up, right? And so I got, a great thing anybody can go do is get a reservation for 10 or 12 people at a restaurant. You don't have to know everyone that's going to be there ahead of time. You'll figure it out as you get closer, and create a curated dinner. Just figure out who are the most important people coming to South by that you want to meet, and declare that you're having a dinner for all of them. Invite them all to it, and those are where I think a lot of the best things happen. The other thing is just you have to surrender to South by Southwest. You have to give in to the serendipity of it. With my calendar for South by Southwest, at any given time, there's at least 5 places I'm supposed to be, because there's so much stuff going on and so much stuff that I want to do. And so my rule of thumb is I build my calendar out with all the 5 or 10 places I want to be at any given time. And then it's kind of like the rules of war. Like, once the first shot is fired, you throw out all the plans. So once we go, then then I do whatever's the easiest thing to do. Because you can spend so much time waiting in line or transporting between places. So I've got my list, and it's from wherever I am with who I'm with, either where are they all going, or what's the easiest thing for me to go do next. That's my own personal strategy. So that's South by. So Austin Startup Week. Who went to Startup Week? It was 2 weeks ago. So not that many of you. Okay, great. So Startup Week is in the fall. It's the week between the 2 weekends of the Austin City Limits Music Festival. And Startup Week is something that we help organize that's really meant to, in some ways, it's meant to be the part of, here's where you actually get to see Austin for being Austin. Because everybody was coming to South by thinking they were seeing it then. And so really what it is, it's a celebration of all the great things that happen every week here in Austin, but we've just piled as many of them in October into that 1 week as we can, and do some other special programming, and invite lots of people who aren't from Austin to come here, and really just showcase all the great things that happen here every week in the startup community. So that's a lot of fun. The biggest event of Startup Week and of South by Southwest is the Startup Crawl, which is that big party I was talking about. This is and for that, we basically get every startup that we can downtown to throw a party at the same time. And then everyone who's too small to throw their own party comes here to Capital Factory or to another place that we set up and has like a little table or booth. And it's just a massive, crazy startup fair, startup party. It's kind of like a recruiting event. It's a great opportunity to get inside some of those other offices or places where you might want to work or have thought about and want to learn about or want to meet the founders or other things like that. And it's just a lot of fun. So here's a quick preview. That one, but you can go in March. We've always done that on Thursday night before South by, and this year, and it's always been one of the only semi-official events. Like South by is really strict about what's an official event or not, and you can't be an official event unless you start on Friday. And this was always like the pre-event Thursday night, but we were allowed to call it the pre-South by Southwest Startup Crawl, which is like using their name is a really big deal. This year, and it's still been the biggest party at South by. This year, it's going to be Monday, which is in the middle of South by, and it will actually be an official event. And so I expect it will be a lot bigger. So I don't know what's going to happen, but it should be pretty awesome. So another great thing about Austin is Austin has an incredible Google presence, and Google is just a wonderful part of the community. Capital Factory and Austin are the Google Tech Hub. For Austin, and then there are many tech hubs all over North America. There's about a dozen of them, and then they have other campuses and tech hubs around the world. But this is basically one of Google's way of helping to support the startup community. They write us a big check every year, which we really appreciate, to help us put on all kinds of great programming and events. They do things like sponsor a diverse entrepreneur in residence who gets a free membership here and a stipend to help them work on their startups. They put on all kinds of great programming. Our members here have access to all the other Google Tech Hubs. So if you go to San Francisco or to DC or to Boston or like some other place, there's other places where you can land where someone will give you a free place to sit, and there'll be somebody like me there to go introduce you to people and connect you. And it's really just an awesome thing to be part of. So we're really glad to be part of that. Overall, Google just is a wonderful supporter of the whole community here, and even just the way that they do it. We work with lots of partners, and we appreciate all of them. Some partners come in and they're like, okay, we're going to sponsor this. What's our deliverables? How many people are going to be there? How many impressions are we going to get? What's this going to be? Google's like, here's the money. Go do something awesome. And it's pretty amazing to work with them like that, and they do that for so many great things in the community that they just go out and support and help make happen. So we really appreciate them doing that. Some other great things happening here in Austin. Google, we're the second city to get Google Fiber. Anybody have Google Fiber? A couple of you. I don't have it yet. It's already been a couple of years, but it's amazing because I've benefited so much from Google Fiber even though I don't have it. Google Fiber was announced years ago now, and there was no fiber here in Austin. And they announced that they were going to do it, but it was still going to be like a ways away. And so as soon as they announced it, like the next week, Grande Internet, which is the local internet provider, announced that they were going to beat them to it and roll out their gigabit service. And then within a few weeks later, AT&T announced that they were going to roll out their gigapower service here in Austin. And so even before Google Fiber launched, people in Austin had, and none of that cost more money. It was all basically your internet cost the same amount, it just got way faster. So even before Google Fiber was for anybody here in Austin, a whole bunch of us got faster internet just due to the power of competition in the market. And then I have Time Warner where I live at my house, and we don't have fiber, but overnight, before Google Fiber launched, my internet just got like 3 times as fast, the same times. I didn't do anything else, and nothing else changed. It just got faster. And so that's pretty amazing. That's the power of competition. Google Fiber is rolling out through Austin, and lots of people have it, which is pretty great. But that was amazing to see the power that they can have on the market to move the market just by announcing that they're going to do something, and how that had a very material impact here in Austin. Another example that I'm excited about is their autonomous cars project. Austin is also the second city where Google has their autonomous cars on the road. And certainly we all have had our transportation challenges. We had the Uber and Lyft debacle, which some of you may have seen or been privy to. We have the big transportation bond coming up in the November election, which I encourage you to learn more about if you haven't. I'm personally going to vote for it. I think it's something we really need, and transportation is one of our biggest challenges. But all of that leads towards, for me, a big part of that's how do we get autonomous cars on the roads that we can all use as quickly as possible, because I think that's going to be one of the biggest impacts for reducing congestion and traffic and improving our quality of life. So really excited that they're doing that here. What I didn't talk about in all this was Apple. Apple has it used to be their second largest. Austin is now the largest Apple headquarters in the world. There are more people working here in Austin than in Cupertino. And most people don't know that. Apple's very quiet. They are not very active in the community. They are not broadcasting all over the place that they're here, but they're doing a lot of really important work here, and they have a very, very large presence, and that also is a really good thing for Austin. They run the App Store from Austin. I don't know if you guys know that, but that's pretty fucking cool for a lot of people that build apps. Next thing is University of Texas. Like I said, if it wasn't for that white building right there, you'd see the University of Texas just north of us. University of Texas, every great city has a great university connected to it. The University of Texas is one of the largest universities in the country. It has the largest graduating computer science class of about 800 students, which is ranked 8th out of 10 last I saw. So really great computer science school. In addition to the computer science school, they got an engineering school, which is also really awesome, and they're all going to end up being programmers anyway too. So you have all that coming out of it, and a lot of research and a lot of other great things happening there. So we're really lucky to have the university. It's a massive talent pipeline. I teach an entrepreneurship class there for student entrepreneurs called the Longhorn Startup Program, which is started out as trying to be like a mini capital factory there. And there's a ton of other great entrepreneurial activity happening at the university. This is a little bit about my class, I think. Longhorn Startup is designed to give student entrepreneurs the opportunity to work on their startup while they're in school and get real course credit for graduation.
I'm a biology major.
I'm an MBA student and also earning my master's in advertising.
I'm studying electrical engineering.
I'm a junior film major and computer science minor.
We brought in some incredible speakers to meet with our students, like Michael Dell and Brett Hurt and Mark Cuban.
We have a lot of great presenters come.
The speakers are really fantastic.
When you've got a startup that's real, it's time to get involved in the lab. And the lab takes the seminar to a whole new level by giving you a bunch more credit, connecting you with local mentors, and giving you lots of time to work on your startup with your peers.
I wanted to get some real world business experience before I graduated.
When I signed up for the class, I had to start defending my idea and my business model right then.
In addition to getting time to work on their startup, they get matched up with local entrepreneur mentors that work with them to improve their pitch, to focus them in the right direction, and to help them get it pointed towards funding and acceleration.
A lot of the acceleration that we've had so far wouldn't have been possible without this class.
We've had some of the greatest mentors.
I mean, the access to folks like Josh and Bob and Ben Dyer and just the entire mentor network.
They're always so knowledgeable and so helpful, and always willing to give us so much support that I think not only has been invaluable, it's just been fun.
This class has linked me with a mentor that has just become an angel to us.
And it's always been a fun experience just because they're also fun people.
And you get to talk to those people and ask them questions and kind of get a glimpse into how successful people made it to where they are.
Get this kind of insider knowledge, learning what it means to make a company, to make a startup work.
There are a lot of great resources on campus for student entrepreneurs. But it's also great for them to be able to get off campus and go to Capital Factory, where they're surrounded by other real entrepreneurs that are working on their startups and learning from each other.
I'm so pleased to have Capital Factory.
It's such a great place. That's where we meet up with some of our mentors.
It's a beautiful place to work, and it's a hub of entrepreneurship in Austin.
You know, I started my first company when I was in college, but we didn't have any of these kinds of support structures. We had an entrepreneurial center, we had business courses, but nothing like this that could give me time and credit to actually work on my startup in school and learn from all the great resources that the university has to offer.
I've wanted to be in this class since it started.
This is what I came here to do, build a startup and take it to the next level.
This class has been amazing.
I love it.
Awesome, so that's Longhorn Startup. We do a demo day in the spring where all the startups show off what they did. There we go. That was Mark Cuban at one of them. We always have a great speaker there, and that'll be coming up, I think, May 4th. My slides are a little slow here, catching up to me. Try that. There we go. So mark your calendars for that on May 4th. That's always a lot of fun. Bob Metcalf, if there's one person to know at UT Austin, it's Bob Metcalf. Bob came here to Austin about 5 years ago. I was so fortunate to be one of the first people that he met here, and he's been a great mentor to me and to so much of Austin. Bob is just a legend here. He was the inventor of Ethernet. He founded 3Com, which was a massive networking company that sold to HP for a couple $2 billion. He's been a venture capitalist, a publisher, an editor, a writer, and I often say he's also an amateur comedian. He's hilarious. And he's now a professor of innovation at the University of Texas, where basically his job is to inspire students, professors to go create great companies. And we're just so lucky to have him here. He's all over the place. I'm constantly just trying to keep up with him. And he's just very approachable and accessible. If you see him somewhere, he loves talking to people. Walk up and introduce yourself and talk to him. I'm sure he'd love to talk to you. He's really pretty incredible and really inspiring. So we're really lucky to have him here. Another big thing happening at the University of Texas is the Dell Medical School. It's a new medical school. It's one of the first medical schools and teaching hospitals in the U.S. and I think in like 30 years. And so lots of energy around health tech and healthcare and other things happening here in Austin, and we're seeing a ton of that bleed over into what we're doing here. Health tech is our #1 vertical of startups that we see here at Capital Factory. We see lots of things, not only those, but that we see more of that than anything else. And another important person to know at the medical school is Minnie Calhoun. She's that's the dean, Clay Johnson, in the lab coat. So he's technically in charge. Minnie is kind of one of his right-hand people who in particular interfaces a lot with innovation and partnerships and people like us. And then another person I don't have the slide up here for is one of our directors, Melly Price, who recently joined the medical school to help run all of their technology integration as well. So there's some different people that you want to know there. Another thing you want to know at the University of Texas is the Texas Venture Labs. This is a program focused on graduate students, in particular to teach them about lean startup methodologies and then basically embed them into local startups where their project is to go help work on a local company here in town. So their accelerator takes companies in town, brings them to the university, and puts a team of MBAs on them. And then there's Capital Factory. I'm not going to talk a lot about that because you got the tour. Many of you got the tour, and you saw the little video at the beginning. But Capital Factory is the center of gravity for entrepreneurs here in Austin. We're a community center. We're open to everybody, and we try to work with all the other different groups here in Austin as well to help them all be more successful and build that rising tide mentality that we talked about. Our business model is really two parts. We have the co-working space and the event space. That's a cash business. We got to pay the rent here every month. It's really expensive. We pay that rent from everybody here paying rent. And it's that simple. We're not subsidized by the government. There's no big VC fund or big philanthropist backing what we do. We got to pay the rent every month from everybody here paying rent. And so everybody you see sitting out there, pays rent for their part of it and what they do. And then we have a bunch of great sponsors that help support it as well, like Google and Mercedes and Merck and the Department of Defense and others. Did you have a question?
Yeah. How did you guys start up?
Let's push that one to the Q&A to the end. That's a little bit of a longer story. But short answer is I was doing all this. I was angel investing. I was working with companies and starting companies, and I wanted to have other people like me. If I invested in a company, I wanted other people like me to invest in it too, because I knew that was better for the company and for my investment. So one part of it's running the space and all the events. Last year we had about 50,000 people come through here. I think we'll have more like 100,000 next year. We have 50,000 square feet in this building. This is the top floor. We have another floor, and actually we just signed a lease to take all the retail space on the ground floor where you walked in. And so we're continuing to grow. And that all that energy creates opportunity. It attracts all these resources and things that can help startups. So that's talent, it's like people that the companies can hire as they grow, it's big companies that want to work with startups that can be their first customers, and it's investors that come through that can invest in them, and then press, attention, government officials, all kinds of other stuff like that. And this is just this big magnet and whirlstorm that just sucks all that kind of stuff in. And that's the virtuous part of this, is that the more stuff that happens, the more attention and energy it attracts, which we can then use to help the companies, which makes more good stuff happen. And then on the other side of it is the fund, where we invest in companies. And so we have a fund that invests. The investors for our fund are pretty much all the mentors here at Capital Factory. And part of what we do is use the space and the mentors to figure out who the best companies are and then invest in them. And then we take all the great opportunities that come, the best programmers that come in to hire, or the best executives to join your team, or the customer opportunities, or when Kleiner Perkins, or Founders Fund, or some investors coming through, and we introduce those obviously to the ones that we know the best and that we've invested in. And so that's basically how this model works and how we run. A couple other quick things, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. How do I know what's going on? Number one answer is sign up for the Startup Digest. It's a weekly email newsletter that I help put together with some other people, and it's a calendar of everything coming up that you need to know about. startupdigest.com/Austin. You can click subscribe and put in your email, and you can also submit events. If you have something going on that you think people should know about, you can submit it there. There's a Facebook group called Austin Startups. It is the embodiment of the startup community online. That is like the place you go. If you want to ask the startup community something, you go post it there. That's where everybody is, and you'll get lots of answers. I think there's now like maybe 14,000 people on there. It's pretty big. Follow me on Twitter. That's another good way to find out what's going on. AustinStartups.com is a Medium periodical, so it's a collection of basically everything that all the Austin entrepreneurs are writing about. And if you go there right now, you'll see all kinds of different things that Austinites are writing about. The Austin entrepreneurs are talking about, mostly about tech and startups, but also about other things that they're talking about. I mentioned this blog post earlier at the very beginning. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but here are the 10 things you can find on it. So the 10 things it's going to tell you how to go do. Sign up for the Startup Digest. It's going to give you a whole bunch of Twitter accounts to follow of people that post a lot of stuff about what's happening in the startup community. It'll tell you which Facebook groups you want to be part of. It'll tell you where to go get your news to listen to find out what's going on, what news sites cover the local things that are happening, which coffee shops to hang out at, which happy hours to go to, which meetups you can't miss, go to a hackathon, which co-working spaces to go to, and then how to learn to code. Like I said, that's just bit.ly plug into ATX startup scene. How to land a job at a startup. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because we can dig in more depending on what you guys are most interested in. A lot of people are looking for jobs. With most of these, how do I do anything? Personal introductions are always best. Always leverage your personal network, and your personal network's always bigger than you think it is. So it's not just your parents and your immediate coworkers, but it's everybody that you interact with during the day and everybody that they know. And so how do you really leverage that and network to go find people? Because the difference of a person introducing you into something versus you submitting a form or submitting a resume or something like that is completely different. So you really want to try to get a personal introduction. If you can't, you should still do all those other things, but try to leverage your personal network if you can. Those are some Facebook groups you can post stuff at. We do a whole session just on how to meet investors. It's the first Tuesday of the month. Here are some of the different Austin accelerators, which is one reason when a lot of people looking to meet investors join an accelerator. That's a big reason why they join. Here are the major ones here in Austin. They tend to have different focuses, as you can see. Capital Factory and Techstars focus on tech companies. Athena Health has a great program. If you sell into doctors' offices, they are really good for that. They have a big network of doctors' offices you can sell into. Unlimited USA focused on social good companies. SKU is a really great accelerator focused on consumer packaged goods. So think granola bars and energy drinks and anything where distribution on store shelves is a key part of your success. These are all some different programs that are available. Central Texas Angel Network is also a great resource. It's one of the largest angel groups in the country based here in Austin. They have a monthly application cycle. They do a lot of their screening meetings here at Capital Factory, and they're very, very active investors. So that's another way to get in front of investors. And then here are all the VCs in town. Let's see, where'd it go? There. We have a lot of venture capitalists here in town and more coming. I feel like there's a new one that launches about every 6 months. Probably the newest one on here is Tom Ball and Next Coast Ventures, or actually, depending on how you count it, True Wealth, Sarah Brand is another fairly new one, but lots of great firms here in Austin. I probably need to take Techstars off of there now, because I believe, I'll double check, last I heard Techstars Ventures is only investing in Techstars companies now. So that's the meat of it. Fred, you want to come on up here? I'll wrap this up. So again, we can talk about some of those other slides you saw as you have the Q&A. So the Q&A is usually more fun, so I'd rather leave it for that, and we can jump around as you say. One thing I'll leave you with is, Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, has a lot of great essays. One of them is about great cities. And he talks about what makes a great city. And he says every great city has this unique ambition, something about it that you just identify with and that attracts certain kinds of people. So we'll talk about a couple different cities real quickly before we get to Austin. But curious if you can guess. If you've read his essay before, don't cheat. But any guess? What's the ambition of Boston? What do you want to be if you're in Boston? Anybody know? What's Boston known for?
Research.
Research? Why?
It's a lot of education.
A lot of universities, right? So Boston's be smart. That's their ambition. What's Silicon Valley? That's a bad hint. That's, just because there's others that's that. But something like it's be powerful. They want to build the biggest companies in the world and disrupt, right? And, New York City.
Be famous.
Be rich. New York City is expensive. LA is be famous. Right? Hollywood, right? Washington, D.C. Be an insider, right? Like that's what it's about. So what is Austin? Anybody have a stab at it?
Be weird.
Be weird? That's that is what it's known for, right? What's that mean? What's be weird?
Be you.
Be you?
Small business.
Be small business, be unique. Yeah, those are all good ones. Be yourself. So this is a friend of mine, Bijoy Goswami. He's another great community leader and leader in the startup community here. And I first heard him say this, but I definitely agree with it. And I think that is part of what makes Austin so awesome. And being yourself is being an entrepreneur. And there are so many great entrepreneurial things happening here. So, like I said, you can find all of this online. Now we'll jump into the Q&A. So really appreciate Fred joining us up here. Fred helps us run Capital Factory. Fred's a serial entrepreneur, been involved in many, many different businesses. One of the ones that I thought was the coolest when I first met him is that he helped. He was worked very closely. I don't know if you're there. Or you could probably correct me, but he was very close. I don't know if it was the very beginning or joined, but with Richard Garriott, starting Portalarium? No, what was
Origin
Systems. Origin, which did Ultima Online, which is one of the first massive multiplayer online games here in Austin. And then Portalarium, which is another company that Fred helped start. And then Fred also has a bunch of retail businesses. If you ever walked around downtown, there's the Toy Joy toy store. And what's the hat?
We don't own a hat box, no.
No, not hat box?
No.
What's Wild Love Music. Wild Love Music. Sorry, yeah, Wild Love Music. I was thinking how.
Austin Rocks, which is a fashion boutique in Austin City Hall.
So he's got all kinds of retail businesses here too. So he's involved in a lot of different things. Very involved in the local Austin community, and then at Capital Factory, he helps manage all of our international activities. So in addition to being a hardcore local Austin downtowner, he's on the Downtown Alliance and helps run the downtown area. He's also traveling all over the world, and helps maintain our relationships in Europe, in Latin America, and many, many other places, and helps bring great international entrepreneurs here to Capital Factory. So thanks for joining us, Fred.
Thanks for that overview there, Josh.
And just open up to Q&A. Anything you guys want to ask about, we can talk about anything. We can talk about Capital Factory, we can talk about Austin, we can talk about our businesses, we can whatever.
What do you think are the most impactful startups in Austin?
Most impactful?
Yeah, most impactful.
What is impactful?
Meaning, for example, solving a problem that improves life for a lot of people, or having a product magnitudes cheaper than, or a solution that has been magnitudes cheaper than before. These kind of.
That's a good question. What do you think, Fred?
Well, I just don't even think along those lines, because, again, to Josh's just last point here about being yourself, we're not really aiming for the fences to hit home runs and be unicorns and billionaires. I mean, it's nice if you have that opportunity, but so much of that is on the basis of good luck and a whole lot of things breaking your way. So, the real opportunity here, why we're #1 in all these rankings for entrepreneurialism as a whole, is just to start a business. I mean, it could be a lifestyle business. It has to be sustainable and profitable, and again, as Josh demonstrated in my background with bricks and clicks kinds of businesses, not all, in fact, people often ask me, what are you most proud of? The tech companies that, I've taken one public, sold one to a public company, built one for a large Asian public company. Is it those, or is it your retail businesses? And I actually say, it's my retail businesses. And they go, really? Why? And I go, because they're still around 25 years later, have consistently employed 30 people in this town, and add a lot of value to the quality of what Austin is. Every one of my tech companies are now in, except for the current one with Richard Portalarium, they're in Wikipedia, They're, oh wow, I really like that game, no, I really like that brand, but you can't engage with it anymore, it's not around. So we live in a very ethereal kind of world. Things come and go very quickly. And so to find things that you can do that actually contribute to the world around you in even small ways that are sustainable and that allow you to be an entrepreneur and work hard for yourself, making your own decisions, to me, that's the real measure of the value proposition. And that's what Austin really subscribes to and cherishes. I mean, we get those breakouts occasionally. Josh went over the slide there of, the ones that are hitting it big for a number of reasons, but that's not usually the big goal we start with here. That's kind of what they're doing in Silicon Valley.
Well, that's a great answer. I agree with all of that, but I do think you'll find as you talk to different people, you'll get different answers. And so there are some people that would be like, no, we're trying to do unicorns. And I think if you look at the companies on that slide that were the unicorns, most of them were trying to make unicorns. So I agree with Fred that all those things are valuable, and your question was about value. But I do want to qualify that it's not like nobody's trying to do that either. We just have a full range of all kinds of businesses here. When you ask that question to me, some of the companies just off the top of my head that I think about, honestly, one of the first ones I thought of was Favor. Just as far as like impact, as far as like saving people time in their lives every single day, because oh my god, I use Favor like so much, and that's the food delivery, deliver anything kind of thing. So I don't think that's what you meant, but I do think they're actually really impacting a lot of people's lives in a lot of different ways that might be more than people expect, and more than just delivering food. Some of the companies that, as far that I look up to the most. I think what Data.World is doing is really compelling and really interesting. That's Brett Hurd's new company, and their mission is to bring together all of the data sets and open data online in the world and bring them together in one place and make that accessible for lots of other people to build on and mash up. And I think there's actually a really lot of powerful, impactful things that can come out of that. Another company is called Aunt Bertha. Aunt Bertha, the name is that's the companion to the compatriot to Uncle Sam. But Aunt Bertha is a service to help people who need health and human services. So think all kinds of things. Food stamps is one example, but healthcare and lots of other things that you might get. Find that, because actually one of the biggest challenges for hospital systems and a lot of other municipalities and others is they have all these services, but how do you get them to the people that need them? And actually, they're not very good at that typically. And the people that need them, it used to be much harder to reach them, but these days, a lot of them, if they have anything, they might have a phone, and they can get to, basically this is like a directory or a website that helps them find the resources and stuff that they need. And they just raised a Series A funding from Techstars Ventures, and are doing very, very well.
And the Dell Medical Center, as Josh mentioned, is probably one of the big catalysts to keep an eye on, because Austin, the city, the university, and Dell, in forming that entire venture here over the last, and Kirk Watson, who helped make that happen, our state senator, the ambition is to put Austin on the map in health tech and in life sciences, on a par with San Diego and Boston over the next 10, 15 years. And this whole area, the northeast quadrant of downtown, as we call it, from here to the university, from Congress Avenue and the Capitol over to I-35, is being designated as the innovation zone of downtown. It's kind of our last frontier for parking garages, and not much happening in here except for Schultz's Garden. And this whole area is going to transform dramatically. We're actually in it right here in the southwest corner of that area, to be a huge health tech, med tech, medical devices, biotech. We're building wet labs, and all kinds of other stuff are on the drawing board. So if that's something that is of interest to you, that you're in the right place without having to go to the east or the west coast.
Now, one other company I mentioned on the impact side is called Verb. And what they do is they work with really large organizations to put on these entrepreneurship competitions designed to pull out innovative ideas out of their teams and employees and then turn those into products. I judged one that they did with the Dell Children's School, the Children's Hospital, which is totally separate from the medical school we're talking about, and it was incredible to see the things that the doctors and nurses were coming up with that were really great business ideas and things to transform healthcare and things for them too, and they're doing that across all these different verticals, which is really interesting. But it's a for-profit business. It's not a nonprofit. They're a business.
What are some of the most underrated volunteering opportunities?
Underrated volunteering opportunities. That's a good question. Let me see. I wanted to show you.
I looked into volunteering for South by Southwest, then I saw it was 48 hours of commitment.
For South by, but then you get an $800 badge. Yeah, that's why. So there's a Facebook group called Austin Tech Volunteers. That's a great thing to join, and around events like Startup Week and other things like that going on, people post there looking for people to help out with different events and things like that. So that's one good way.
Oh, we have tons of things. Austin's a very community engaged city, and so whether you're into environmental causes or civic kinds of things, you're in your community. We've got 4,400 nonprofits in Austin because we're the seat of federal, state, county, and city government. So, that breeds a lot of nonprofit headquarters, if you will, here for the state and larger. And everybody here is always looking for help of all kinds. I mean, if you put yourself out there, following a lot of the paths that Josh suggested, going to meetups and just getting involved in the community and talking to people, you will find unlimited amounts of places to engage yourself. Just follow your interests and your passions.
Nice. Thank you.
Top 5 green tech influencers in the area?
It's probably in the solar space most.
Okay.
We have a lot of solar companies here. I have to think to name them all, but the solar industry, because Austin again is the seat of state government and a lot of regulatory and compliance kinds of history. There's a number of solar companies that have started up here with their headquarters, but now are statewide and going national. What is there, Josh? Solar Winds.
Solar Winds isn't clean tech, is it?
Green.
It's IT.
Yeah. Solar Winds.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, I'm thinking
Solar Bridge is what you're thinking.
No, it's another one. I'm not in that space, but.
There is stuff going on. It's not something I think either of us is super up to speed on. One of the companies here at Capital Factory is I think is really interesting, called Curb, and they do basically drop a little box inside your power meter that then lets you monitor all your home energy usage and identify, appliances that are broken or things that are inefficient or things like that.
Yeah, I went to South by Southwest Eco this past week, and I was surprised. I didn't meet any local companies really that were doing green tech. So I was wondering.
Yeah.
If there were
there's the Pecan Street project,
okay.
Which is a big, what I'm looking for, but a big, energy efficiency project, and I think a lot of stuff will be happening around that. So I
saw
looked into that.
And South by Southwest Eco is another one of those seed conferences that South by Southwest has been working on building. What is it, 4th or 5th year now, I think. Just like they do with EDU, which precedes South by Southwest Music, Film, and Interactive in the EdTech area. Because again, Austin is very green conscious. We have a lot of land that has been set aside as preserves and endangered species area and so forth to be able to maintain as much quality of life here as we can for as long as possible. And so there's a lot of interest that's been forming around those sectors.
Any particular people vocal on the issue? No, not really in the tech space. Okay.
I mean, if you Google some of those keywords, we had a big environmental movement here for a while in the 80s and 90s, which led to the acquisition and the set aside of a lot of these lands, the Balcones Canyon Land Preserve and others, because we had some big showdowns with huge developers that were coming in, and especially moving out to the western part of the city in the rolling hills and the beautiful areas, and starting to just kind of level everything and build giant subdivisions, and urban sprawl. And so there were big showdowns going on in the 80s and the 90s here, and since most of that has settled down, it's no longer as divisive. Everybody now has gotten on board and recognized that this is an important part of what makes Austin unique and valuable, and so there are definitely people still working heavily in those areas. But if you do a little Googling,
Sure.
see who some of the current leaders are in those areas.
What has surprised you most since starting Capital Factory, either directly related to Capital Factory or in the tech community more broadly?
These are the most unusual questions we've ever gotten. It's normally like, which coffee shop should I go to? Like, how do I find this thing? How do I find a co-founder? So what the question was, what was the most unusual what?
What has surprised you most since you started Capital Factory, either directly related to it or more broadly in the tech community as it's changed the last few years since you started?
I mean, honestly, when we started it, like, we didn't think I didn't know Austin was gonna, like, boom like that. Like, we've just been so fortunate to be in the right place at the right time as Austin's continued to grow and boom, and so many great people have moved here, and, we really, I think, benefited from that. And that wasn't, something that was planned or expected. Let's go way in the back.
Do you think that Austin's startup scene does a good job of tapping into the creative scene that's been here for a long time as a resource and hiring artists and musicians and filmmakers and writers rather than just kind of like seeing it as a part of quality of life? You know what I mean?
Sounds like you don't think so. So that felt like a loaded question, but I mean, I don't know. I'm sure they could do a better job of it. In general, I think it's better now than it's probably ever been. We're seeing stuff like there's an ATX media scene meetup that happens here at Capital Factory, trying to bring in people from the media community, both from the video and publishing side, but also on the kind of the artist and graphic side and the gaming side. I think VR is doing some really cool things there. We're seeing just a ton of energy around VR, and I feel like VR is like finally giving the gamers their day. We're like, they're important, and like they're. I'm looking at Fred.
We've been working on it for 20 years.
But like, I feel like that's pulling a lot of the gaming community back into the startup community, because now they're not just making studios. They're like, oh no, they're developing tech and other stuff around VR. So I think that's been an interesting component of it.
Great, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because the only thing I noticed you didn't mention is that there's like stuff like BioWare here and Blizzard, I believe. Like, I think Activision has like a presence here. So is that generally, is gaming kind of clumped in with the tech startup community here, or?
It hasn't been. It's been kind of a little siloed, and because they typically like don't work downtown. Kind of, they want it. It's a little bit of a different. It's been like a little bit of a different office setup kind of thing. As I've been trying to pull them in different ways, I found they didn't, and they often saw themselves as, no, we're not building these. We're a studio. We're not. It's not the same kind of a company. But I feel like that's started to change over the past 2 or 3 years.
We've got about 8,000 people working in the video game industry in Austin, and it's the second. Texas is the second largest state for video gaming in the country, and Austin is the epicenter. There's a fair amount in Houston, rather Dallas also. But to Josh's point, a lot of it is kind of out in the suburbs along Loop 360 and North Austin and around the Arboretum and Domain area. But I think to your broader point about the creative industries as a whole, meaning music and film, which were the kind of real genesis of Austin going from a college town and a seat of government. In the 60s, there were only 250,000 people in this town. I mean, it was pretty damn small. That was 50 some years ago. And so it's just blown up, and a lot of that, while the MCC and semiconductor industry and the electronics industry that migrated down from Dallas all were happening there in the 70s and 80s, that's really when music found its genesis here too, and the film industry started to coalesce. But all of those really happened in 3 completely different silos, and they still are not. I would say the digital divide in this town is not just kind of east and west of I-35 and the haves and the have-nots technologically and economically and so forth, but it's also within our tech and creative community. There isn't as much, and we all are conscious of it. We're all constantly are working and trying to find more ways to bring that together, but it still tends to be, music industry, if you're following the conversation in Austin right now, is struggling. I mean, the average wage of musicians is like, $18,000 or something like that, and can't afford to live here anymore. And filmmakers, since Texas pulled out all of its film incentives under the current governor, thank you very much, a lot of the film industry, competitive film industry, has moved off to other states to Georgia and New Mexico and elsewhere, and so we had a very robust growing filmmaking community here, and that's kind of cratered on us as well. And so, you know, we have lots and lots of talent here, and through some of the new opportunities that Josh just mentioned in VR and kind of new stuff that is tech and creative together, it's giving us opportunity to bring that community closer together. But there's still a lot of work to be done on that front, and you know, for a small town as we are, we don't all seem to manage to be in the same bars at the same time to have those conversations.
Right, and I didn't mean that to be like accusatory, I just meant it kind of in the sense that tech could be kind of like a saving grace of sorts for some of those musicians.
Well, tech itself,
Tech's the saving grace for everything, pretty much. That's
but tech also tends to be isolated because we can do it anywhere, okay? We just kind of burrow in, get into what we're doing, and we're not engaged. I mean, that's one of the big things that even my friend Josh here is now really embracing in a very vigorous sort of way politically, okay? I mean, the tech community here is, you know, it's just kind of this other layer that is formed in Austin, but has not been engaged in local politics and state politics and what's been going on. And as a result, we don't have, everybody's not on the same page for things like short-term rentals and for ride-sharing solutions and other kinds of things to come. And so some of that is something we're working to change, to try to get the tech community to wake up and become much more vocal, much more involved in its own community and its destiny.
I
Now
know
we've opened up again.
we haven't had any questions from from
A woman on the left side of the room.
Thank you. I know everyone else had their hand up for a long time. Josh, this is about Longhorn Startup. I was curious, have you had successful businesses launch from this? And when they do, how much equity do Capital Factory and UT take from them?
All of it. So yeah, this is next semester will be the 10th semester of the class, I think. So 5 years, and so we've had about 1,000 students go through the class, and every semester there's typically about 10 or a little more companies, and of those 10, typically 1 to 2 keep going after the class and become, I don't know how you call it real, but some you know, they raise money, they go work on it, they go do other stuff. A bunch of them are still going. A bunch of them have raised millions of dollars. One, Lynx Laboratories, was acquired by Occipital, which is a really hot company in the computer vision VR space right now. So I think that'll be a really good outcome. One that's going here at Capital Factory right now that's doing very well is called TasteBud, and that's an app to help you that basically drives college students to off-peak hours at restaurants. Basically, it's a discount app, but it's really sophisticated on how it does it. Beak's another great one. Thanks, JD. JD took my class and now works here at Capital Factory. If you guys are interested in the accelerator or anything like that, JD's a great person to talk to, or about anything about UT. We had to force him to stop wearing orange all the time when he came here. That's a true story. We're like, JD, stop wearing orange all the time. But Beak is a really interesting company. They are basically creating the Amazon of books for Latin America. So think for Spanish speakers who love books and buying books and talking about books and book reading. And they went through the class there. They went through Capital Factory, and they just got into Y Combinator, and they're doing really, really well.
And so how much equity does?
Oh, sorry. UT class doesn't take any equity. No, it's for the students. Nothing changes about their company because they take the class. The school doesn't take any equity. They're not most of the 80% of the teams are undergrads who have their own ideas. 20% are professors with research that might be being commercialized. They might already have given some of it to the university, but it has nothing to do with us. That's like taking our class doesn't change any of that. If it was developed at the university, maybe that's already something there. And then Capital Factory, our model is we work with lots of companies in a lot of different ways. There's lots of ways to work here for free and to benefit from the mentors or other things by being a mentor here, to get involved in our accelerator program, to get access to the very best mentors who only want to meet the very best companies, to get access to the best introductions for talent and customers and investors is to be part of our accelerator program and to get investment from us. And for that, our accelerator program takes 2% common stock which is dramatically less than any other accelerator program. Most take on a kind of like 8 to 10% range. So our model is we see that as advisor equity. It's like we're giving you this army of advisors that are going to go help you, but our main model is to invest in the companies, and that's how we get equity. And then our investment is just like anybody else's investment. So whatever valuation you have, things like that, it's all based on that.
That's also because we're all founders, and we are not here to take advantage of startups. We're here to work with startups, and if we take all the equity and dry powder off the cap table, then you're basically DOA for your Series A and follow-on investment. So
Yeah, I was just curious because I know UT has its own licensing.
Yeah, we're not part of that. Like taking our class does not change your licensing or anything like that. And and I agree with what Fred just said about wanting to have the right balance of equity in the companies. But I would also say my other selfish reason that I would argue for the lower equity amount is there's a selection bias where the more equity you take, you're going to miss out on the best companies. And our strategy is not to pick 10 of the, only 10 companies and get them. We want to work with all of the good companies. And our business model, our value prop is actually better the more companies we have here. The more companies that are here, the more opportunities they are, and the best companies just naturally bubble up to the top and benefit from those. And so, so for us, we want to be in all the companies, and so having a lower equity amount makes us less like. So another thing about investing is power law. So it's like it's all about getting in the one deal that matters. Like in our first 3 funds, we had 15 companies. One company produces all the returns for all the other companies, right? 14 didn't produce any returns. 1 makes a lot of money. So it's really important you're in that one. If your strategy is screwed up so that you just miss that one, you're fucked completely. Like it totally doesn't work, right? And so that's part of our strategy in making it smaller too, is to make sure that we want the very best companies to be part of this as well. Way in the back, we'll work our way forward.
What do you see in the Austin tech startup community, or Austin startup in general? What's the hardest type of talent to find?
Me.
In this town.
Coders, always is. I mean, we've got almost 60,000 job openings right now in this city. We've got 30,000 unemployed people. The people that are unemployed have none of the skills necessary for those 60,000 jobs. 60,000 jobs are almost all tech related, and most of those are not on the business side, they're on the programming side. So, and that's not just Austin, I mean, that's every place that has a, density of technology companies. I mean, we just have a global shortage of tech talent, and some of the best ones that we could get in faster, like through our universities and so forth, that are from other countries, we have to send them away. So that's a whole other separate issue. But that's it's really the coding side, I think.
Yeah, that's the obvious answer. Interestingly enough, I heard recently that the #1 job in Austin is actually nursing. That's the biggest
that's a different one.
Demand, but obviously not a tech problem. But so that the obvious answer is like coders. Everybody needs coders. It's hard to find coders. It's hard to find coders everywhere. Everybody, the things when I think about like just less of the statistical answer and more of the like, well, what's hard to find? What do I think about? Or consumer marketing experts. Someone that knows how to grow a consumer mobile app business and acquire customers and brand it and grow it, and like that is rare. Most of the people trying to do that have no idea what they're doing at all, and have not done that before, right? And then the other thing, if you were to ask Bob Metcalf that, who I mentioned before, and I would generally agree with this, he would tell you that the #1 thing we're lacking here are experienced CEOs, like someone that actually can take a good idea and really scale it and grow it and build a great team about it and build a sales organization and build it out. We've got some great CEOs, but not enough of them. And if you go to Silicon Valley, there are a dime a dozen. There are a lot of people that if you got to get something that's working, you can plug somebody into it that can really take it to the next level.
What's your advice on finding a serious co-founder that wants to get started as soon as humanly possible?
Go to a hackathon.
Talk to the person next to you.
Go to a hackathon, work at a co-working space. So the generic answer to co-founders is it's kind of like, when's the best time to start a business? 20 years ago, When's the second best time today? When's the best time? What's the best co-founder? It's somebody you've known for 20 years.
Is that true?
Yeah, for sure. The best co-founder is somebody you already know really well, and you know that you work with them really well, and you trust them, and like you have a deep relationship. You worked together at Indeed for 6 years, and like you've been on a team together, and like that's the best co-founder. But that's like saying, you know, the best thing to do is to like win the lottery or something. Like well, if you don't have that, okay, now what do you do, right? So if you don't have that, then you got to go network. You got to go find people. And the low-hanging fruit is going to be hackathons and co-working spaces. A hackathon's a weekend lock-in type event. One's called 3-Day Startup is a great one that happens here in Austin. There's another one called Startup Weekend. There are many others. There's a self-selection process. The type of people that go to a hackathon or the type of people who want to go join a company and start a company. So target-rich environment. Everybody there is eligible, pretty much. And you get to experience them. You get to work with them in a high-pressure, time-sensitive environment, which is really important versus like talking to them at a coffee shop or something. So you actually get to see what it's like to work with people, what they're like after they've stayed up all night, and do they smell bad, and do they really get shit done, and like, you know, all this other stuff that you would never get. So I think that is like the best environment ever for that type of thing. And then co-working spaces, right? The type of people that are here and the type of network and the volume of people coming through here is really conducive to that. And like, as you probably, if you were here at the beginning and heard that video, I mean, a lot of people find their co-founders up here. Like, a lot of it's because they come talk to me and I'm like, you should talk to this person, but a lot of it's because they just sit in the kitchen and come to events and come to meetups here.
But finding a co-founder it's like a marriage, you know?
Totally.
And it's, the most important thing is not just the skill side, making sure you can, you know, you have all the chops necessary to get the job done, but it's also how compatible are you? Because there are more startups and even, you know, longer term companies that fall apart because of disagreements with the founders. And boy, when that happens, it can kill the company very quickly, and people won't invest in it, and you lose time, and it's awful. So it's like a marriage. It's not about getting into the relationship, it's about how do you get out. And so the more you know about the other person when you get into the relationship to begin with, in terms of their character and strengths and weaknesses and all that kind of stuff, the more likely it is that you will have a long-term, at least long enough to exit the relationship together, as opposed to having to deal with that as another part of your startup journey. I mean, boy, shareholder disagreements are just awful. I've been through them, we've all been through them, and it's the worst nightmare compared to not even having enough money.
And I've seen perfectly good companies blow up. Like a company that I was super excited about, that I thought was going to do great and had a lot of promise, and then they just shut it down because the two co-founders couldn't get along and they both walked away. And it was like, what just happened? Like, how did that? Like, that company was awesome.
It sounds like a lot of things you're talking about really strongly relate to IT industry. What's the percentage of, let's call it, non-IT tech hardware startups here at Capital Factory, or if you know it in the investor portfolios?
Is your distinction you're making is hardware?
Yeah, non-IT hardware.
What's non-IT hardware?
Like, let's say, energy-related hardware.
Like non-enterprise?
I'm not sure I see the distinction. Like, I mean, IT is a very broad term, so I think when you're saying that, you mean software maybe or something?
No, non-software.
Yeah, no, it's a non-software, but here's the funny thing. I have never met a hardware company that didn't have more software engineers than hardware engineers. And every hardware device I see is connected to the internet, is a platform, is part of this layer. So when we started, we were like, we're software only, we're not hardware. And if you came to, I would have been like, we don't do hardware. And then people started sneaking in all these hardware things. And then, you know, wearables became a thing, right? Like wearables and now we have a lot of hardware devices. It's actually one of our more popular things. We did a hardware showcase at South by Southwest last year. And so I see tons of it in all those spaces. I think there's a lot of it. I think it's happening in every different industry. You say energy, one of the examples I gave was Curb, which is exactly that. They're a smart meter you drop in your box. We've had people doing a smart thermostat that was, I'd say, also in that kind of space.
3D printing, rocket
lots
ships.
of 3D printing, rocket ships. Yeah, lots of other types of things. So I do think there's a lot of that going on, and it's certainly growing. And we don't make that distinction. We're not like, oh, that's not us. That's like everything you said. We would have been like, come on in. You're all part of it. And all those companies, they need all the same things everybody else needs. They need to hire programmers and grow talent. They still need investors. They still need exposure. The mentorship they need often is going to be along a lot of the same types of issues. So I don't see the big distinction there. But I do see a lot of activity around it.
And Capital Factory does tend to attract and focus on software as a service kinds of companies, mostly because they're way cheaper to start, and your opportunity to scale globally is universal. I mean, as soon as you go live with your product, you're available all over the world. And I've got a company right now from Norway that started with 15 programmers in Norway. In 3 years, has blown up to 100 million users of their product, and 80% of them are in the United States. Okay, so how did that happen? So those kind of opportunities are just low-hanging fruit. And the other thing is Austin's history is just not that deep in design and manufacturing. Whereas I grew up in Michigan, and boy, when I go here, I'm going to be judging the finals for Accelerate Michigan competition for a $1 billion event in a couple of weeks. And every time I go up to Michigan, all the pitches are like completely different than what I hear down here. Tons and tons of designers with, they've got prototypes that look like they've already manufactured 1 million of these things, just beautiful prototypes, great hardware, great manufacturing capabilities, because that's the history of the industrial north and, design programs and the auto industry and all that stuff. So different parts of the country will, have greater density of skill sets in these different areas.
So we probably have time for one more question, but then what I'm going to do, then there's a happy hour after this. And so normally, it's very hard for me to leave because everybody walks up and asks questions, and it's like between me and the door. So when this ends, I'm going to run from here to the kitchen, and you can all follow me. And there's beer there and other things, drinks, sodas, and water, and probably some food. And there's a happy hour, and some of the members might be there, other people too. And I'm happy to stay and answer more questions and things like that too. So we'll do one more question. Before we do that, I also want to point out a couple people in the room who will also go over to the happy hour and you might want to talk to. So JD, I mentioned before. JD runs our accelerator program. He's went to UT. He went through the Longhorn Startup Program. He's talked to more startups here than anybody but me, maybe more than me, I don't know. And so he's a really great person to talk to who have a lot of great perspective. Who else? Arij is our accelerator coordinator. She hasn't been around quite as long as JD, but a lot of the same exposure and experience, and so another great person to talk to about what it's like to work here or the accelerator or anything like that. Who am I missing?
Just us right now.
Okay. Cool. And then you might see other Capital Factory staff in there too. So one more question.
What do you consider to be healthy as far as month-over-month revenue growth for a startup? I know one figure that I've relatively familiar with is 20%, and then also what do investors look for that same number?
At this stage of companies that we're dealing with, that's just not how I think about it at all. Like once you have a baked business model, like it's not changing much, and you're like doing something very repetitive over and over again, and you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars a month in revenue, scaling to hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in revenue. I think that's where you're looking at those kinds of numbers. And most of the companies we're dealing with here are trying to get to $50,000 to $100,000 a month in revenue. And I'd say up to that point, it's a little less about that. I mean, sometimes it can be, but usually things are changing a lot during that process. So trying to show some historical growth doesn't mean a lot of sense because whatever you've been doing, you've only been doing it for 2 months. And that keeps changing. So it's just not how I find. It's not how I'm thinking about it or how I'm talking about it. If anything, I tend to end up looking at, and again, you should get the time frames of like things are changing so fast. Looking at the past few months, it's like year over year gets interesting, but even then, that's only when you're further along and you have years to look at, right? So the more is better, right?
And the main value to the revenue is it gives you more leverage when it comes time to raise capital. I mean, the investors are much more interested in a company that has revenue, has customers, and is growing in any way. And from your perspective, the line is going in that direction. And that just gives you a lot of leverage when you're negotiating the term sheet to raise capital. But there are other ways to also grow, and some of that, like that company that I just mentioned from Norway. It's about scaling too. So if you get huge adoption of your platform, it may be about monetizing through advertising or through other forms that will come a little bit later. But if you suddenly get massive adoption, you just roll with that too. So that's a different barometer than just revenue.
Good problem, staff. All right, great. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming. I hope you found that helpful. And like I said, I'm gonna go from here over to the kitchen. You're all welcome to follow me over there, and grab a drink or grab something to eat and answer more questions. And then one last thing is just, obviously you all found out about this somehow. It's probably because you saw it online somewhere, somebody tweeted about it or posted it to Facebook or something like that. We love having this room be full, and the way you could help us to do that, to say thanks, would be to go post it somewhere and tell somebody about it. So please do that too. Thanks.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fred.
Pleasure, Josh, as always.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna follow him up. He's still wear the beard. Hi there. Back. You're back.
Yeah, I've done it.
Yeah, so it's a lot of the same presentations. Yeah, I wanted to compare it. Yeah, no, and there's always.
Yes, but just like,
Yeah, they do.
What year is this?
First year. So, yeah, was here in July. So well. Good. Working for this when I first got here, and they were crazy.
Yeah.
It's
It's not
timely,
the-
and it's downtime. and-
It's not the 2-year vacation they say it is.
Yeah, at least not the first semester. So now I'm starting to get into other things now and
more
try to figure out
stage,
where I
exactly,
fit
yeah,
here
yeah, so it might,
also
every
some
or
stuff
every
up, so
half an hour.
like one of the things we talked about TBL, takes some things up, so yesterday, doing that next semester.
Awesome.
So working with
Yeah.
startups there and yeah, just
I
trying to figure out
like
as many things as I can do.
What were you doing before?
Yeah, so I worked in finance, worked at a hedge fund,
Cool.
wanted to really switch gears.
You're ready to change.
Yeah, so that's what, I mean, one thing, I don't know if this is a good question, but